Hello my dear learners, how are you? I hope all of you are fine. Welcome to all in my English class. I am Md.Shamim, Senior English Teacher, Milestone College. My dear learners, you know very well that if you want to obtain a good marks in English, you have to know all the grammatical topics. Right form of the verb is one of them. If you want to write a composition, a paragraph, letter, formal letter, etc., you have to know the proper use of verb. So today I am going to talk about right form of the verb and I will show you some basic rules on it. Just try to follow the instruction of these rules. Then I hope you will be able to understand about right form of the verb. Okay, let's start our main discussion part. My dear learners, let's see rule number 1. Suppose if the subject is third person singular number, in present tense you have to add s or yes with the verb, right? I again repeat it. If the subject is third person singular number, in present tense you have to add s or yes with the verb, right? So let's see an example here. Suppose he read a book, but we have to apply here he reads a book. Why we used here reads? Because the subject is third person singular number, that's why we have added here s. That means he reads a book. This is the appropriate meaning. My dear learners, if the sentence is in universal truth or habitual fact, then you have to use it present indefinite tense, right? So let's see an example here. Suppose we can give here an example. The sun rise in the east, but we have to use it the sun rises in the east, because the sentence is in universal truth. That's why we used here the sun rises in the east. That means we used here present indefinite tense, right? My dear learners, let's see if we find always, regularly, sometimes, often, occasionally, normally, generally, daily, etc. If you find this kind of words in any sentence, then you have to use just be1. That means the present form of the verb, right? So here we can give an example here. A good boy prepare his lessons regularly, but we have to use here a good boy prepares his lessons regularly. My dear learners, now if you find yesterday, ago, long since, last night, last week, etc., if you find this kind of words in any sentence, then you have to use just be2. That means the past form of the verb, right? Suppose here we can give an example here. He came here yesterday, but we have to use here came instead of come. Why you used here came? Because here we find the word yesterday. The work has already done, that's why we used here came. He came here yesterday. This is the appropriate meaning. My dear learners, we have already learned 4 basic rules on right form of the verb. Now rule number 5, just now, already, yet, ever, lately, recently, etc. If you find this kind of words in any sentence, then you have to make it just present perfect tense, right? So let's see an example here. Suppose he go out just now, but we have to make it he has gone out just now. Because why we have used here has gone? Because here we find the word just now. That's why we have make it present perfect tense, right? My dear learners, we have already learned 5 basic rules on right form of the verb. Let's see rule number 6. If you find had better, had rather, would better, would rather, let, must, need, dare, etc. If you find this kind of words in any sentence, then you have to use just be1. That means the present form of the verb. Let's see an example here. Suppose you had better to go home, but you have to use here you had better go home, right? This is the proper meaning. You may find here to go, but you have to remove this word to, just use be1, that means the present form of the verb. My dear learners, now rule number 7. If you find mind, cannot help, with a view to, get used to, look forward to, etc. If you find this kind of words or phrases in any sentence, then you have to use just verb plus ing. That means you have to add ing with the verb, right? So I again repeat it so that you can easily understand. If you find mind, cannot help, with a view to, get used to, look forward to, etc. If you find this kind of words in any sentence, then you have to use just verb plus ing. So let's see an example here. Suppose he came here with a view to meet me, but we have to use here he came here with a view to meeting me. Why we used here meeting instead of meet? Because here we find the word with a view to. Here we find with a view to. That's why we used here meeting instead of meet, right? So he came here with a view to meeting me. My dear learners, now rule number 8. If you find as if or as though in any sentence, if you find in the first part of the verb of the sentence be1, that means the present form of the verb, then you have to use just be2, that means past form of the verb. And if you find in the first part of the sentence be2, then you have to use v3, that means past participle form of the verb in the last part of the sentence. Suppose let's see an example. Here we see he talks as if he know it, but we have to use it knew, because we find here he talks. This is the present form of the verb. That's why we have to use here be2, that means the past form of the verb. So he talks as if he knew it. This is the appropriate meaning. But if you find here he told as if he knew it, but then you have to make it he told as if he had known it, right? So he talks as if he knew it. This is the proper meaning. My dear learners, let's see rule number 9. It is high time or it is time. If you find this kind of words or phrases in any sentence, and if you find subject after these words or phrases, then you have to use just be2, that means the past form of the verb, right? Let's see an example. Suppose it is high time we change our food habit, but we have to use here changed. Why we used here changed? Because we find subject or pronoun after the it is high time. That's why we used here be2, that means changed instead of changed. So it is high time we changed our food habit. This is the proper meaning. Dear learners, now rule number 10. This is very important for you. If the subject is singular, it will take singular verb. If the subject is plural, it will take plural verb, right? Let's see an example here. Suppose the color of his eyes is dash blue. Here we see be verb, that means am, is, are, was, were. But we used here singular verb. Why we used here singular verb? Because this is the subject, the color. This is the singular, that's why we used here singular verb. But students sometimes make mistake here. They put here verb based on this word, but this is not subject. This is the subject, the color, that's why we used here singular verb. So let's see another example. The students in the class dash gentle. The students in the class, here we see be verb, am, is, are, was, were. We used here are. Why we used here are? Because the students, this is the plural, that's why we used here plural verb. So the students in the class are gentle. Let's see another rules from right form of the verb, right? Suppose if you find list in any sentence, then subject, then you have to just add should with the verb, right? I again repeat it so that you can easily understand. If you find list in any sentence, then subject then you have to just add should with the verb. Suppose, let's see an example. Walk fast lest you may find here only verb miss, but you have to use here should miss the train. Walk fast lest you should miss the train, right? So we have added here should with the verb miss, should miss, because we find here lest, right? My dear learners, let's practice from right form of the verb, right? Okay. Here we see some words in the box. Suppose defend, be, honor, inspire, think, right? Okay, let's start reading. Patriotism is a noble virtue. It dashes a man to shed the last drop of blood to the dash freedom of his country. Patriotism is a noble virtue. It inspires. It inspires. It inspires. Why we used here inspires? Because this is the singular number, third person singular number. That's why we used here inspires. That means we have added s with the verb. That's why it inspires a man to shed the last drop of blood to defend the freedom. We can use here defend. Okay. We can use here defend the freedom of his country, right? Okay. Now, a man without patriotism dash not better than a beast. A man without patriotism, we can use here be verb. So we can use here is, as this is the singular subject, a man. That's why we used here is from the be verb, right? So a man without patriotism is not better than a beast, right? Okay, let's next sentence. A true patriotic man dashed by all is respect is honored. We can use here is honored. Is honored by all, right? He always dash for the welfare of his country. He always, what kind of word we can use from here? Think, but we have to use here thinks. Why we used here thinks? Because this is the third person singular number and we find here always. That's why we used here thinks. That means we have added s with the verb. That's why he always thinks for the welfare of his country, right? Okay. Patriotism is a noble virtue. It inspires a man to shed the last drop of blood to defend the freedom of his country. A man without patriotism is not better than a beast. A true patriotic man is honored by all. He always thinks for the welfare of his country, right? Okay, my dear students, now we are at the last moment of today's class. Before ending my class, I have a suggestion to you. During this critical time, I have a suggestion to you: just stay at home and stay fine. See you in the next time. Bye bye.